Wisdom is a quality that's valued in most cultures, and that's not any different in the Lakota culture. In the Lakota culture, wisdom is a very important quality, and it's one of the 12 that Joseph Marshall talks about in the Lakota Way. He uses 3 stories to portray those with wisdom, and I'm going to talk about 2 of those stories. And the first one is called The Story of the Man Who Spoke Softly. And this story introduces us to a man who was respected for his quiet ways and good decisions at a very young age. He was asked to be a leader and the chief of the tribe, and he reluctantly did so. He didn't do it because of his own glory, but he did it for the people. 2 generations grew up under his leadership, and there came a time that the young men in the tribe thought it was time to pass on the chief's blanket. So they hatched a plan. They were going to catch a bird, and they were going to put it in their hand and ask the chief, "Grandfather, I have a bird in my hand. You are wise. Is the bird dead or alive?" Well, that would put the chief in a quandary, because if they said alive, they would squash and kill the bird. But if he said dead, they would release the bird to fly away. So one morning, the village is all gathering for an important meeting, and these young men decide to go through with their plan. So they approach the chief and they ask him the question, "Grandfather, I have a bird in my hand. You are wise. Is the bird dead or alive?" Now, this grandfather, in his quiet way, he approached the young men and he studied the ground as he approached them. And he turned to the young man holding the bird and he smiled patiently and he said, "Grandson, the answer is in your hands." The second story that Joseph Marshall uses is a lesson from the gully. And this story starts out on a cold winter afternoon in the Upper Plains. I imagined it looked something like these pictures up in the Black Hills. And a young boy and his grandfather are on their way home after a successful hunt of jackrabbits. The boy suggests they shorten their trip by taking a shortcut through the gully. But Grandpa explains that is a summer shortcut, and right now it's full of snow because it's been an extra hard winter, so there's a lot of snow in that gully. And the boy tries to argue with his grandfather and brings up different animals that can cross this gully without falling in. But Grandpa explains, it gives an example of the rabbits, that their large hind feet help keep them on top of the snow. Well, the boy decides he's going to take this shortcut anyway, so he hurries on ahead and he says he'll have hot coffee waiting for his grandpa when he arrives at their cabin. Well, the grandpa reroutes his path and he decides he better follow this boy. And as he follows him, he pulls out a rope and he pulls out a rock with a hole in it. And he ties that rope to the rock. And as he comes to the gully, he sees that the boy's footprints disappear. So he has now found the place where this boy has sunk into the gully. And he takes that rock and he throws it into the air several times until it breaks the crust of the snow and goes down into the deep snow of the gully. Eventually, the boy finds that rock, and the grandfather uses the rope and the rock to pull him out of the gully. And after the boy is pulled out of the gully, he says, "Grandfather, you are wise, and how did you get so wise?" In part of his explanation, the grandfather says, being wise, having wisdom, is knowing what to do with what you know, when to do it, and how to do it. Or sometimes a person must know enough to do nothing. He also tells him that he knew he would try the shortcut no matter what, because wisdom told him that the grandson had to learn that lesson himself. And he also explained to the grandson that wisdom reminded him that he had learned the same lesson when his grandfather had pulled him from the very same gully. This story reminded me of ourselves as children. Our parents tell us, "Don't touch the hot stove. Don't touch the hot stove." And they may say this repeatedly, but no matter what, we have to touch that hot stove to find out it truly is hot. And in the grandfather's explanation to the boy, that now that he fell in this gully, and since we touched the hot stove, that was the beginning of our journey to wisdom. Joseph Marshall says that wisdom is life's gift. And I made this scrapbook page of a quilt to represent this idea that each part or quality of the Lakota Nation is brought together to make somebody wise. And so Joseph Marshall puts it perfectly in his quote, where he says, "Life demands that we exercise perseverance, face adversity with courage, demonstrate fortitude in the midst of temptation, tell the truth no matter how painful, walk in humility, sacrifice for our families, practice generosity to be truly rich, respect all who are part of the great circle of life, choose honor above personal gain, act with compassion toward the needy, strive for harmony in personal relationships, and otherwise demonstrate the virtues that give meaning to life." And so in his chapter, one of the ideas that I came to value is that even as we age and become old, we may not physically be able to do so many things anymore, but we have lived life. And by living life, we have gained wisdom because we have had to go through life and learn about these many qualities.